Hello viewers, you're watching It Matters and I'm your host Chancellor. Since the US has retrieved their forces from Afghanistan in 2021, it has marked the end of 20 years of bloodshedding war in Afghanistan, but it also marks the return of the Taliban regime in the country. The Taliban is known for the suppression of the basic human rights like right to education, freedom of speech, etc. This kind of suppression is especially imposed on the women of the country. Many Afghans fearing the oppressive regime fled Afghanistan. Recently in Afghanistan, Taliban has restricted women and the girls of the country from working, going to public places like universities, schools, parks, gyms, etc. Let's have a quick discussion with the diplomats and experts to get to know their point of view on the issue. Taliban has banned the women and the girls of the country from using the public places like parks, gyms, universities, schools. How do you see this action by the same Taliban government who earlier this year promised its citizens in front of the whole world that they are going to provide them with full security, development, and now it's just a fake promise by Taliban?
With regards to their promises versus realities on the ground, with regards to basic rights and civic liberties and women's rights, I don't think the Taliban are contradicting themselves. Between 1996 and 2001, when they first ruled the country, they had a similar draconian policies where women were not allowed to work, they were not able to move out of their homes without a male escort and a certain definition of an outfit that the Taliban had introduced. So they are actually replicating everything that they were doing in the 90s. I think it's more the misunderstanding from the international interlocutors engaged with them before August of 2021, possibly believing that the Taliban had changed. Majority of Afghans did not believe such a change. Their ideology is a combination of a strict interpretation of the Sharia law and very hardline traditional practices in limited rural areas of Afghanistan.
Girl-child marriage is a significant issue in Afghanistan where it is happening at an immense scale. What do you see the reason behind it? Is it due to the lack of resources, the poverty in the country because of which the parents are being forced to take this action?
Is something that no family would actually opt for, to basically get their young daughters married at a young age. The only influencer or reason for making such a decision, such a harsh decisions on children, is extreme poverty, and sadly, this issue of child marriage has seen an uptick following the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. There are some debates and speculations that because the Taliban leaders in great numbers entered Kabul 16 months ago, there's also an increased desire amongst these foot soldiers of the Taliban in higher ranks to basically remarry and marry second wives or third wives.
The women of the country are being restricted in the workplaces, even in the NGOs, because of which some aid funding organizations for the time being have stopped providing fund to the Afghanistan people, because of which I can say that the whole Afghan population has been suffering. How do you see this action by the aid funding organization? Is it a correct step in accordance to you? How is it?
I have said it recently too. For me, humanitarian aid has also, beside its ethical part where you need to provide employment opportunities for women, men equally, there's also a practicality to how aid is delivered. If aid agencies are rightly targeting men and women of the society for the humanitarian aid, the very much needed aid to be delivered, then they also need to have men and women to deliver that aid. Otherwise, half of the population, a majority of vulnerable women who are, leading their household will end up being deprived simply because the aid agencies are unable to hire women to deliver aid to them. So they lose employment opportunities and also the opportunity to receive aid from the very women that would need to work with humanitarian agencies. I think we know that humanitarian aid cannot be conditional upon political, decisions or realities of a society or how the state behaves. But at the same time, practically aid agencies really need those enablers, that enabling environment for them to be able to hire people independently, for them to be able to manage aid in a way that is providing opportunities to both men and women. I don't really see how aid organizations would be able to work in a country where they are being told you cannot hire people that we disagree with. You cannot distribute aid in location A, but location B. So interference in aid operations, I think, is the main reason why aid organizations would simply be unable.
Afghanistan faces one of the most severe colds in the world. On the top of that comes a lot of health problems, because of which Taliban has recently granted rights to its women of the country to work in the health sector as nurses and health supporters, not in the administration staff, but as just nurses and the health supporters. Do you think that somewhere this is a ray of light for the women of Afghanistan under the dark world of Taliban?
It's a start. Obviously, in the health sector, women were still able. I'm taking you back to the 90s. There were a few women who could still work in clinics and hospitals. So yeah, it's not necessarily something new that the Taliban have agreed to, but we would like to take any positive step as a good start for a better change for tomorrow. Now, whether that will unfold as a reality remains to be seen, but reality remains unchanged. And the reality is that we are facing one of the harshest winters across the country. The temperatures are, in some evenings, it's even below -30, -20 plus. And people don't even have food to eat or firewoods to keep warm. And this is the majority of the population that we are talking about.
Do you think that somewhere Taliban is taking all these actions just to grab the attention of the Western world, just to be in recognition from the Western media?
I'll be surprised if that is a strategy that is going to help them in any way. It's only getting us closer and closer to believe that it's a pariah state, and it will never have the standing of a state that you basically interact with from the international community perspective. What their belief is, I think the Taliban themselves can speak to their intentions. But obviously, if this is a strategic move to, persuade the international community on Taliban's recognition as a state, as a legitimate state, I don't think it's having the impact that they expect. It actually keeps them further away and sidelined from international politics and development.